Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Lunchroom Syndicate. I am Christopher here with a special year-end review ish of my Jaguars. Understanding that at the time of recording in this video upload, there is still one game remaining against the Indianapolis Colts. But let's be honest, the likelihood of this game being a win for the Jaguars is slim. I'm gonna try and make this relatively quick and maybe one take. So let's just get started and talk about the Jags and the disaster that was this year. They're currently 2-14 with one game to go. We have our 17th game of the year. So yeah, we get one more week of shit. This has just been the worst possible scenario, disaster wise for the Jaguars, from just the coaching staff to the players to just how the season went, getting blown out by New England by 40, not showing up, player mutinies. It just was awful. And then obviously I mentioned Urban and his. I don't know what happened. I'm a Buckeye fan. He was on the team and he was like really good. And I understand that college coaches don't always translate. And I was never a fan of the hire to begin with, but I didn't expect it to be this big of a disaster. It is shocking how much of a disaster he was and ended up being fired only 13 games in, which is very quick. And where do we go? We'll talk about that later. Where does this team go from here? It's a lot of unanswered questions right now, and I don't know if they have a lot of time, as much as it seems like it. This is a team that's been bad for a long time. But let's start just kind of with the season. As I mentioned, they're 2-14, which is bad enough, which means they're 3-29 in the past two seasons. And they hit 20 in a row at one point between last season and this season. Somehow beat the Bills. I don't know how the hell that happened. If that game didn't happen, who knows? We beat the Bills and Dolphins by 3 each. So who knows what is very very this close to potentially being a sub 500 or not sub 500 team, a winless team. If we lose next week, we'll become one of the few teams that's lost 30 games in a 2-game stretch. I can think of maybe 2 others off the top of my head at least in the 16-game era. I believe the Lions did when they went 0-16. I think they went 2-14 the year after, and obviously the Browns from a few years ago went 1-31 infamously. Actually, they went 4-44 through 3 seasons, but we'll go with that. And if you think that's bad, the Jags have a shot at some even worse history with their point differential. Right now, they're sitting at negative 219, which gets them just outside the top 25 and worst point differentials of all time. Understanding that this is a 17-game season, the first of its kind, this is a bit of an asterisk. But if the Jags lose by 20 or more to the Colts, and you saw this team play, that doesn't seem that far out of the realm of possibility, does it? That would put them almost in the top 10, and any more than 20 would pretty much put them in the top 10. They can't get to number 1. That would take like a 70-point loss, and I doubt that's going to happen. But they have a shot at top 10 worst point differentials ever, and that's pretty telling when you think about it. That's really telling of the season, how it went, and how much of a disaster this season was. To give you some more stats here, the Jaguars were 24th in passing yards on offense, 23rd in rushing yards offensively, 32nd in total points for the season on offense. They're dead last. They're worse than the Giants, and the Giants are trash, and they've been so bad since the bye week, like almost historically. Defensively, they're a little bit better in terms of yards. They're actually 16th against the pass. Now that might be because teams have big leads and don't pass as much, and that's fair. But there is some positives there. Tyson Campbell's been pretty good at times. Josh Alvarez looked okay. He needs help. They need help with him, really really bad. But we'll talk about that in a bit. They're only 25th against the rush though, which is not great. And when you're 30, to get a bad point differential like the Jags have, you can't score points, but you have to give up a lot as well. And it's not all on defense when your offense is as bad as it is, but they are second to last in total points against. And obviously the drama with Urban Meyer starting off on the wrong foot with his coaching hires, hiring a Chris Doyle, that douchebag, and then it just never seemed to progress positively from there. Talking to a coach about, oh man, it seems like I'm playing Alabama every week, and it just seems like he was stunned by how difficult the NFL game was going to be, and that was telling from the get-go. Then he had the incident in the bar, which is a personal matter, but the whole incident as a whole is very weird for an NFL head coach, not just the possible alleged infidelity involved there and on how you feel about that type of thing, but just why didn't you travel with your team after a loss? That could have been a huge win. They lost on a last second field goal, and he made it about him. He made himself bigger than the team, and that from a football perspective was telling for me, and that was really where I was like, yeah, this ain't gonna work. I knew it wasn't from the get go. I had said that, but that was really the point. I'm like, yep. If he lasts the season, I would be surprised, and he ended up not because there's, you know, where to begin, on multiple occasions, like, well, why wasn't he would be asked questions like, well, why isn't James Robinson in the game on multiple? Oh, I don't know why isn't. I just let the coaches do it. Throwing the coaches under the bus, throwing players under the bus, and when in reality he knew exactly what was going on because he wanted it that way. At one point, if you remember, right before he got fired, he benched James Robinson, said he didn't know what was going on. And like coaching staff and not necessarily were like, no, he's the one that did it, and I do believe that because I think Urban Meyer just doesn't want accountability. When your head coach doesn't want accountability for his actions, that's not good for the team, and it really showed this year. The Jags are the worst team in the league. It's particularly close. At least the Lions are fun to watch. The Jets are the Jets, but at least they got something. They've had a few wins this year, right? And then the cherry on top, and it really didn't matter, but it was just a final straw, maybe, or maybe they were going to fire him anyway. But Josh Lamble coming out and said he kicked him. Granted, he didn't kick him hard, but you just don't do that. These are professional football players. These are professionals, and you shouldn't kick somebody anyway, even if this is relatively smooth or soft. That shows how much of a piece of shit you are, and I'm not an Urban Meyer fan. You can look at old videos. You can look at a podcast I did with a buddy of mine, Hunter, the Best Damn Podcast Period, or whatever it was called, Best Damn Sports Podcast Period, or whatever. I can find you link if you want it. And you could tell, this was well before seeing him. Like, I hate Urban Meyer. I'd rather him not have a coach. But there's a cat in my lap, so don't mind that. It was just, and then he got fired after 13 games, and maybe it didn't ultimately matter, but the team needed it. From here, though, the thing is we got to develop Trevor at this point. That should be the main priority, obviously. Trevor Lawrence has got to be priority number one, and everything we do in this offseason has got to be towards him. What does that mean? That means hiring a stable head coach. Not the next flashy name in the pan necessarily. Hiring somebody maybe that's going to stabilize this franchise to some extent. Maybe a Jim Caldwell type. Or something along those lines, or Doug Pearson. Although the way his tenure ended in Philadelphia doesn't give me it gives me pause for this situation. I think Doug Pearson maybe should be looked at as a head coach again, but it was just a very weird ending. Maybe get better wide receivers next year, whether through the draft and or free agency. I know Etnan got hurt. And he was probably going to play some hybrid role maybe this year, which was about the only thing that maybe could have gone right with his draft pick because he shouldn't have been drafted there. And that's not his fault. That's just the team, I think, panicking when Kadarius Toney wasn't available to them. And then he got hurt in like his fourth snap, in the preseason. It was just a joke. So hopefully maybe next year he comes back strong and plays a bit of a hybrid. Maybe he gives us some much lacking firepower out on the outside and even in the backfield because as much as I like James Robinson, he's not a home run hitter. He's just a really good running back who can give you 4 to 5 yards per carry and rip off some big games, but he's never going to break off the big one. But as far as the wide receiving core, we'll talk about that in a minute. One of the good things and one of the few good things you can take out of this is the maturity level of Trevor Lawrence and dealing with what he's dealing with and saying all the right things, saying he looks like he's maturing, and that's a good thing. It doesn't look like he's being flustered too much, at least publicly, by the just disaster that the Jaguars have been. So hopefully we do what's right with him going forward, and where do we go from here? One thing I imagine the first overall pick, or if we somehow win and pick number 2, which I doubt we will, I think we'll pick number 1. Is I think we go with one of the 2 defensive ends, Aiden Hutchinson or the Oregon Thibodeau. Josh Oliver is a good talent. He's not an elite defensive end in my opinion. He can't take over games unless he has somewhere else. He's not Myles Garrett type. We need somebody else to help him out. And I think that should be priority number 1, quite frankly. As I mentioned, draft and sign wide receivers. Overhaul the whole core if you have to, unless there's a couple guys that Trevor specifically wants back, maybe a Marvin Jones type or a Laviska Shenault. I wouldn't mind having DJ Chark back, but he had that one good season. It just hasn't been the same since, so it's hard to rely on him at this point. I think he's a free agent anyway, but that's something to keep in mind. Get James Robinson healthy. He tore his Achilles. What I mean by that is don't rush him back. There's no need to rush him back into the season and then get him getting hurt again. That does a disservice to everybody involved, especially to him. And if he has to miss a couple games early on, let him miss it. Then so be it. That's a tough injury to come back from. And one of the next things I think this offseason should be a priority because the Jags have a lot of needs and holes. We could talk all day about pretty much every position across the board at this point. Upgrading the line a bit. I think the line needs some help. Cam Robinson is not a franchise left tackle at this point, and there's potential on this line, but this is not living up to it at this point. So maybe look into getting some depth, getting some guys to come in and fight for spots. Maybe that'll help out. So that would be where I would go as well. Moving forward with next year, my expectations. Despite this year being just terrible, this team needs to win games and fast. That's all there is to it. This is, we're in year 11 this year of Shad. It's been 10 years of Shad Khan ownership. He bought the team in end of 2011, and 2012 was his first season. So we're in like year 11, and it's been just an absolute disaster for him. The team is 41-118 with him as ownership, and that includes a 10-6 record. That's a win percentage of only 25.6. So basically winning quarter of your games at a time. And that's not good. Sorry for the cat. 5 of the seasons have been 13 or more losses. And, that's in 16-game seasons more often. So you're talking 3-13 or worse. And when you talk about 3-13 teams, you talk about the worst of the worst. Terrible squads. And this year's just another one of them. They're 2-14 right now, And all but one of the years is, you're looking at it and it's 10 or more losses. You just had that 10-6 run in 2017 where the team looked capable and then they just blew that up for no fucking reason other than Tom Coughlin was being an asshole. That's literally it. Because Tom Coughlin wanted it the right way and screw all our big name guys, but let's sign these other guys. Let's not sign Allen Robinson. Let's not sign Jalen Ramsey to extension. Yanni Ngakoue to extension. Let's let all these guys go for no fucking reason. Let's piss them off and then they want out. This team didn't have to be this way right now. As far as how many wins I want to see next year, quite frankly, what I want to see, and this is a bit unrealistic, but I have to have hope. I have to see that they're heading in the right direction. Another 4 or 5 win season isn't really good enough. They need to have 6 to 8 wins next year. That's still under 500. 6 wins is 6-11. Remember, we're a 17-game season. That's still pretty bad, but I need to see something head in the right direction. Anything. Even like the Bengals last year, you saw the improvement from 2-14. They got Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow got injured, but they still won. Doubled their wins. That was 4. Yeah, I guess technically the Jags doubled their wins this year, but so maybe going into next year, maybe doubling is getting the 4 wins would be great, but let's get to 6 or 8. Let's look like we're heading in the right direction at some point. And another reason I say that is the schedule next year is not excessively hard, if I'm being honest with you. The one thing we have to do is we have to be competitive in the division. We have lost 8 straight to Houston and 14 of 16 overall to them. That's absolutely insane. In the last 8 seasons, This is what we're counting. 7 of them we've been swept by the Houston Texans. Only 2017 when we swept them, our big season is. We can't beat them. It's Houston. They're not they were terrible this year. They've won the worst roster in the NFL. They came into the year with what many considered the worst roster in the NFL, and the Jags weren't competitive with them. Houston looked like the substantially better team. Like, substantially better. That can't happen again. Also, figuring out a way to beat Tennessee. Tennessee is a class of division right now, clearly, but the Jags have lost and have struggled with Tennessee since they've changed their names to the Titans. 99, but they've lost 11-13 to them and 5 straight as well. That means you can do the math. That's not very good. 5 wins against these two teams and their combined 29 last games is terrible. And you can go back even further. It doesn't get much better beyond that. Jags have had some success against Indy up until, in the last 6 meetings they've beaten Indy in Jacksonville the last 6 times. I don't know why that's a thing. That is a thing. I don't get it either, but at least that's something to hold their hat over. And so they've had some success. I don't expect to win this week, but, maybe they'll surprise, right? And also take advantage of a weak schedule. Not only is Houston still going to be probably bad next year, and the AFC South in general is not that great, but you have a pretty soft schedule going forward while facing the NFC East and AFC West. The NFC East, outside of Dallas, isn't great. Philly's okay. They're decent. But Washington is maybe okay at some points, but not really. And the Giants are, just as bad as the Jags right now. Well, not quite as bad, but pretty bad. Well, offensively, they're worse than the Jags right now. Or they're at the same level. They're terrible offensively. And then they play the AFC West, which is decent as well, but outside of Kansas City, the Chargers have their moments. The Raiders, who knows what they're going to be next year, and Denver might be in line for a rebuild. So there's hope there. And then the 3 unique games, since they finish in 4th, will be most likely, I'm pretty sure this is going to be the case, but I could be wrong, will be the Jets, Lions, and Browns. That's 3 winnable games depending on how you feel about the Browns. I think the Browns should be better next year, so maybe that's not winnable, but the Jets and Lions are winnable. At least it should be. So when I say I want to see 6 to 8 wins, it's not because I think this is a 6 and 8 win roster. This is what I need to see to have hope, to have something positive going forward from here. Otherwise, what's the point? To close this off, we know what this season was. It was one of the worst seasons in NFL history, quite frankly. Just from all the disasters and urban and all field stuff and being uncompetitive and despite the 2 wins, this is going to go down and should go down as one of the worst seasons by an individual team in NFL history. And this might be the worst Jaguars season ever. And I understand they went 1-15 last year, but there was a light at the end of the tunnel with Trevor Lawrence. And even if they get Trevor, at least Minshew didn't look bad at points. There was seemingly some hope. What we do now, we got the quarterback and we still ain't good. No more excuses. Just none. Time to build a team. I'm not asking for playoffs next year. That's unbelievably unrealistic, but I need to see growth. I need to see, as a Jags fan, if you want to keep me interested, I got to see something. And that's the thing about, I mentioned my hope. My hope's fading with this organization. It doesn't mean I'm going to just, I'm not a Jags fan anymore, but I'm very... before 2017, I was pretty lethargic to the team. I was pretty apathetic. I almost didn't care anymore. And then 2017 brought me back. But now I'm starting to feel that way again. And if Trevor Lawrence fails because of this squad, because of this organization and their inability to do anything right, and not just do anything right and just having wrong decisions, legendarily bad decisions, then how do I have hope going into any season until they happen to get lucky, maybe like 2017? How do I have any hope? And that's where I'm at. Just stop being an absolute embarrassment to the league. This is the most embarrassing franchise in the league right now, and I don't know if it's even close. There's some bad organizations. The Jets are bad consistently, and the Giants are bad right now. They have been for a long time. The Lions are the Lions, but this organization, from top to bottom, is a dumpster fire in every sense of the word, and it's something that needs to change. And if that means Shaq Khan needs to back off the day-to-day stuff and hire someone beyond the general manager, above the general manager, to run the team, do it. Do something, because clearly what's been going on has not worked or hasn't even come close to working. And I appreciate that Shaq Khan built businesses and did things the right way and has an awesome story, but when it comes to the NFL, you're a failure. Shaq Khan. Something needs to change. I hope it's coming. And that's it for me here with the Lunchroom Syndic. I am Christopher. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe below. I don't like doing that, but please do it. Help the channel out. And let me know what you think Jacksonville can do to change their ways. Or is Jacksonville doomed from the start? Until next time, everybody. Deuces.